Right on top of the Zion number Aleph. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. We should have the best of English immediately. It starts like this: Yesh yad l'tzedakah, ayin yad l'tzedakah. Remember what we're speaking about, that when someone takes a vow, so when he expresses it fully, so that's a real vow. When he says that this food should be forbidden to me like a sacrifice, that's a full vow. Then there's a kinoi. Then there's, if he doesn't say like a sacrifice, he says kainam instead of karban. And then there's a yad, where he intimates that he's making, he doesn't finish his sentence. So then that's also considered a neder, and it's binding. That's the idea, that it's binding. So now the question is, yeshad l'tzedakah, yad l'tzedakah. Someone pledges to tzedakah, but he doesn't finish his sentence. So is it binding or not? Is he now obligated to give this to tzedakah? Well, hey chidami, what's the case? Ilema, do we say that the case is damar hadein zuzah l'tzedakah v'adein nami? He points to a coin and he says, this coin goes to tzedakah. Then he looks over, he sees another coin. He says, and this coin also. Okay. Umar says, and by the second coin, so we're thinking that maybe because he just said, and this coin also, didn't say also what? So maybe that should be the case of the yad, and that's our question, is that considered tzedakah or not? So Umar says, Hahu tzedakah atzma, that's for sure tzedakah. He said the word also, it means also, it means a continuation of this. It is the Yahrzeit of Meir Shapiro. Yeah, see again later. So thank you, Jimmy.
My family were Chortkov.
What is that?
My family were Chortkov Hasidim.
Oh.
And he was too.
What year did he pass away? In the 30s? You know?
I don't know.
Who? Meir Shapiro. Okay.
1933. 1933.
Okay, so if he says this also, so of course this is tzedakah. Ella, so we come up with another case. Going to Amar Hadain, Amar Nami. So what happened was he gave a coin to tzedakah. He says this coin is tzedakah, and he looks over, he sees another coin, he says, and this, but doesn't say in this also. So what's it then? Hadain Nami tzedakah kamar. Did he say that this is considered tzedakah? Hadain, when he said this, he means tzedakah. Dilma, interesting, the Aramaic Hadain, it's confusing. People think it means judgment. It just means this. Yeah. But sometimes we say hu hadin, same thing applies. And we don't mean hu hadin, the same law applies. We say hu hadain, this is this. I mean, it's just a comparison. It's just a. So, Dilmar, maybe my v'hadain. What does it mean v'hadain? The nafkusa ba'alma kamar, v'diburu hudlayaske. He meant to say that in this I'm going to spend. Yeah, he says this coin in tzedakah. This coin goes to tzedakah, and then he looks over, he sees another coin. He says in this, and he meant to say, if he would have finished off his sentence. In this, I'm going to spend and not give to tzedakah. Yeah, I assume that there's a whole conflict over here between the fundraiser and the guy. But you told us you're giving. That's a very interesting point. Very interesting point. Avram Nosson brought up that it should be a Meitzim Mechber L'Baraya. By the other ones, it's between him and Hashem. Did he take a vow? Did he not take a vow? Was it Hektish? Well, does Hektish have a rule of a Meitzim Mechber L'Baraya? If Hektish wants it, they have to prove it. But there's also an Isser there, so that would be different. Okay. Mi amrinan kivan iskish lekarbanas. Do we say that because there's a comparison between tzedakah and karbanas, t'ksiv beficha, because the pasuk that we were quoting the whole time when we said bal ta'acher, the pasuk says that might it was the expression of his mouth. It says that he should not delay. Over here, oh no, it's not by Baltache. Kasher dibarti beficha. It is by Baltache. Where's the verse beficha? Do you have a note?
Losacher.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for. It's in Nedarim. It's the first Torah.
Okay. And do you have the pasuk, the full pasuk of beficha? I have the old Gemara. Let me see what it has. Asher dibarti beficha. Yeah, it's really the pasuk right after, or two pasukim after Kisida Neder Leisa Achel Shalme. So it says over there the word beficha. Kasher dibar, as you spoke. And then we have another pasuk in Yeshaya that says, "Binishpati yatsa mipi tzedaka davar layashuv kili tichra kol berach tishav kolashon." So, we. Oh. So. Oh, really? Okay, well, I'll get to that in a second. We say that there's a comparison between tzedakah and karbanos, and just like by karbanos, we know that there is a yad. So too, af tzedakah yesh yad. So to by tzedakah, there's a yad. Yad means the intimation that it's considered binding, even though he didn't spell it out. Or maybe labal tacher diskish. The whole point of that comparison was that you're not supposed to delay your tzedakah. The pledges are not supposed to be delayed, but not that every halacha of karbanos is now going to be applied to tzedakah, that even the way that he expresses it is going to be binding. That maybe not. Okay. Gemara goes on to another question. Good morning. Yesh yad lehefker, a dilma ein yad lehefker. Is there a handle to making something ownerless? That means if he makes it ownerless, see, it's unclear exactly how ownerlessness works. But it could be it works like a neder. This person says his field is ownerless. Can he afterwards say, I was just kidding, or something? Does he have to make a new kinyan? So over here, let's say we're comparing it now to the concept of a neder, that when he makes a statement, it becomes binding just from that statement. So, do we say that no, he has to spell it out 100%? It's not like the neder where if he gives a partial statement, it's already considered a vow. The Gemara says, 1 second, Haina tzedakah. It seems that what the Gemara is thinking here is that why would someone make something ownerless is because there was a poor man there. He refuses to accept the money. The guy wanted to give it to him. So he says, well, he doesn't want to take it. They say, okay, fine, it's ownerless. I'm not using it anyway. It's up for grabs. So it's the same thing like tzedakah. It's the same shaila twice. Is there a yad for tzedakah? Is there a yad for hefker? Hefker, ownerless.
Would that be kind of like leaving the fruits at the edge of the field?
Similar. That would similar to that. But hefker would be where he just says whatever property is, it's just whoever wants it, take it. Imtim Telaimar Kamar, the Gemara says it's an imtim Telaimar. Imtim Telaimar is if you're able to say this, then what about the next case? It's like a flow chart type of thing. Imtim Telaimar Yesh Yad L'Tzedakah. Do we say that there is a handle for tzedakah? That means if he makes a statement by tzedakah, but he doesn't complete a statement, that it's already binding. The ein hekesh lemechza, because there's a hekesh between tzedakah and karbanos. And a hekesh is the comparison, and there's no such thing as a comparison partially. That means it's fully like a karban, just like the karban has that you're not allowed to delay. It's being brought. So too by tzedakah, and it's just like by the karban. If you didn't finish the statement, so to by tzedakah, it's considered binding, even if you didn't finish the statement. Hefker miyamrin and hainu tzedakah. But do we say that hefker is like tzedakah? Ideal mashani tzedakah, the tzedakah lechazi al laniyim, abel hafkin bein laniyim bein ashir. Do we say that it's the same as another? By tzedakah, we have a question. Now, if we take the side that by tzedakah it works, a yad works, so then what do we say by hefker? Do we say that hefker is exactly the same? Or do we say that hefker is different? Because by tzedakah, yad works because that's for the poor. But by hefker, it's for the poor and for the rich. Maybe that's a different story. Okay. Even if by tzedakah there is, but not necessarily is there a yad per hefker. Oy Ravina. Ravina has a question. Yesh yad lebeis hakisei eloi. Is there a handle for a bathroom? Yeah, I got to explain this because those words, that's really a yad.
Like the flushing thing.
What it means over here is that when someone's building his house and he wants to designate which room is for what, so when he designates the room as the bathroom, in that room you're not allowed to recite the Shema. Now, we're asking.
Once it gets designated, even though there's no actual bathroom.
So, yeah.
Before the construction.
Yeah. So I think biblically, the rules of reciting Shema it would only be if there's actual feces within 4 amos. But rabbinically, any room that's designated as a bathroom, you're not allowed to recite the Shema. Now, there's really another question going on. Do we say Hazmana Milsi? Do we say that designation actually works, or do you have to use it once to be? We're making some assumptions here when we start this. So we say Yesh Yad LeBeis HaKisei. Let's say he didn't even designate it. He just made an intimation that he was designating it. Do we say that that's already binding? Echidami, what's the case? Ilema, do we say that the case is, or if we say the case is Damar, Hadain Beisa Lehavi Beisa Kisei Vadain Nami, does the same pattern each time. That he says this room is the bathroom. Then he goes to another room and he says, and this one also. Who Beisa Kisei Nami Havi? That's of course a Beisa Kisei, that's a bathroom. Ella, rather Kagain Damar Hadain V'Layamar Nami. Rather he said, and this, but he didn't say also. What's the din? Hadain Damar V'Hadain Nami Beisa Kisei, when he says that this is a bathroom, and when he says and this, so he means to say that it's also a bathroom. Dilma, my v'hadain, what did he mean by this? The tashmish b'al mekama, and this is going to be used for other things. Umar says, Michlal, this question implies Ravina is accepting, it's obvious to Ravina that there is Ziman. Ziman is when something's dedicated, designated. When it's designated, if you can designate something even, and it becomes that zone. Yeah, Mizuman is also the same thing. Yeah. Right. So do you say that even without using it, it already takes effect? The Gemara says, 1 second. We had a question in another Gemara where Ravina himself was the one that asked the question. Do we say that Hazmana for a Beis HaKisei already prohibits Hazmana, the designation of a bathroom, already prohibits a person from reciting the Shema there? Hazmina l'Beis HaMerchatz Ma'al. Now, he also asked, what about a bathhouse? Is that considered a bathhouse? Where also you're not supposed to recite the Shema in the bathhouse. There's different rooms there. But is that considered designation? Ziman Mayal, ain't Ziman Mayal. Does it work or does it not work? Well, the Gemara answers, it says, Ravina chada migay chada kami bailay. It was one question inside another question. Ziman Mayal, ain't Ziman Mayal. Do we say that designation works, that it's effective, or do we say that designation is not effective? Imtim tzalaymer yesh ziman, and if you say that it is effective, yesh yad yen yad. Is there a handle or is there not a handle? And then the Gemara concludes, Tibayle is a question. Now, Tibayle is another way of saying teku. Apparently, the language of Nedarim and Nazir is slightly different than the other Masechtas. Could be it was like edited differently. And usually, when the Gemara would conclude with teku over here, it ends off with Tibayle. Teku means let it be left as a question. Okay, let's take a look. You can only do this if you have the Hebrew Gemara. I just want to show you in the Ran, the bold letters. The Ran says, Linyan Halacha. You see the bold letters in the Ran? Somewhere up here. Linyan Halacha. See that?
No.
Oh, maybe your Gemara doesn't have it. My Gemara has these bold letters. Yeah, Linyan Halacha, just that. It says, towards the top, it says Linyan Halacha. On the top, maybe it's like 8 lines down in the Ran or something. It says Linyan Halacha b'kedushin naktin and l'chumra. We had a bunch of questions about a yad. So what's the halacha? The Ran quotes these early sources that say, regarding kedushin, we're going to have to say that it works. Remember, he told the woman, and you, he married the first woman, Hariyat Mukadeshli, and then he tells the next one, and you. So we say that there is a yad. The kivan de bayan de leifshita have leisveka deraisa lechumra. Because since it was a question that wasn't answered, that's a biblical question. That's a biblical doubt. What's the rule when we have a doubt that's a biblical law? We have to be strict. Then he goes on, Ubepeya tzedakah. What about peya and tzedakah, where he gave one side of the field, and then he says, and this also. Well, and that also. He says, and this, without the word also. So what did he mean over there? So, or by tzedakah, he says this going to tzedakah, and he says, and this. So Kasav Rashba Nami does lean on the chumra given the salka b'teku. The Rashba says that any question that ends up with a teku, you have to be strict about. Kasav Ramban bel chesiv the bayin tzedakah leifshita behedya sugin the yeshad tzedakah kaimala nami the call teku d'isur l'chumra. Anywhere where there's a teku, you have to be strict. Okay. Now the Ran goes in, he elaborates on this, and he says that the Rambam rules that whenever it says imtim telaymar, if you want to say this, like in a flowchart, if you say this, then we have a follow-up question, and in that follow-up question, if you say this, then we have a follow-up question. So the fact that the Gemara is doing those follow-up questions on only one side of these questions, so that means that the Gemara is actually accepting the imtim telaymar because it's asking on it. And if you say this, what would be now in the next case? That means that it's really accepting it. He says, but not everyone paskins like that. And he goes in, he makes this comment that Avram Nassim mentioned before. He says, 1 second. It should be Hamaiti Mechavera Olavaraya. Yeah. Therefore, the Ran doesn't accept their view. The Ran says that it should be a Mitzi Mechaver Levaraya. If it's unclear that you actually gave it to tzedakah, so then let tzedakah prove it. That the fundraiser, let the fundraiser prove it. The gabbai tzedakah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that was the odd thing about this little passage. All of a sudden, we're moving from Isser Veheter
Right.
to Dina Mamanos
Right.
and trying to apply the
Right.
same for a reason.
By Hefker, he says there's no doubt that, of course, Hefker is just going to be lenient. There's no yad. What about the Beis Akisei? He says that's just rabbinic. It's not considered designated. Oh. Uh-huh. Yeah, I got it. Taisus says Tibaylach that he says that that's kamay teku. The lashon nedarim mishuna. The language of nedarim is different. There's a little taste on the side. Okay. Okay. Now we go back to something that was mentioned in the Mishnah. A new discussion. If you remember in the Mishnah, we mentioned kinei nedarim, that was substitute words for a vow. Then we went into if a person doesn't finish off a sentence, we called it a yad. Madrani mimach, mafrashani mimach. I'm distant from you. I'm separated from you. Well, the final case of the Mishnah was menuda nilach. I am excommunicated from you or ostracized from you.
This is like not deriving benefit for someone.
That's what it sounds like. That means that I'm not going to derive any benefit from menuda anilach. Menuda ani. I am ostracized from you, which means that I can't derive benefit from you. Or maybe it means he can't derive benefit from him. I'm not sure. Well, does it mean the other person can't derive benefit from him, or does it mean he can't derive
We went
benefit
into
from him?
that a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So like,
Uh-huh. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva was choichech, which we said he was scratching to say that this is considered. He was thinking about it to say that this is considered a vow. They can't have benefit. Well, Amar Abaya says, "Ma'idi Rabbi Akiva in Malchus she'ena leike." Rabbi Akiva agrees that just because he wanted to be strict about this, but that doesn't mean that if the person violates it and he does have benefit from the other person, that there's going to be lashes, because he was just thinking about being strict. The word over here, chaychech lahachmer, means that he was in doubt. The Ran gives two translations of chaychech. Sounds like he's rubbing himself, that he is not really sure. He's like going like this against the wall, or scratching his head. Chaychech means to scratch. Or it means that he's chaych, means the palate, he's tasting. He's considering that it's to be strict about this. Well, Abaya says that Rabbi Akiva is Maida. Rabbi Akiva agrees regarding lashes that there's no lashes. If there were lashes, then it should just say that Rabbi Akiva was strict about this. Amar of Papa. But Papa says, "Benedina minach the kolyam le pligidasa." We get some just interesting words here. If it's nedina minach, now what is the word nedina? It's a combination of nidoy and nod. Nidoy means excommunication, and nod means nod means like just to wander, to become distant. Well, everyone would agree that that's considered being distant. Who spells this out over here? So one of the commentators spells this out. The Rush spells it out. He says, Nedina is misnoide dani, muvdal mimach. I'm separated from you. It's the same thing as saying, that I'm distant from you. Well, that would work. Now there is a discussion here in the commentaries. He's concluding a statement by saying that Nadina minach shani yoichalach, distance from you that I eat from you, which means that I'm not going to eat from you. Does he have to conclude that, like Shmuel made that comment before, that it has to be both statements together? Everyone would agree that Nadina minach is asr, it's a real vow. Mishamtana minach l'kol al mashari. If he says, I am excommunicated from you, everyone agrees that that's not the language of a vow. It's a excommunication, but that's not a vow. And so my pligi, so what is the machlekes? Machlekes is only bimenuda nilach. If he uses the word nidui, nidui is How do they translate it? Excommunicated or ostracized?
Ostracized.
Ostracized.
Here's the one who is ostracized and not wear leather shoes or cut his hair.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's other halachas to being ostracized, besides for the fact that people have to separate themselves. Those other halachas is
Not allowed to conduct business, study with and teach.
right. We're going to see there's some complications over here in the Iran regarding is he allowed to have relations? We'll see at the end of the page with marital relations. If he's in. Let's see. So the Rabbi Kiva Savalishna Dini Du Yehu. Rabbi Kiva holds that it's considered nidui, minuda nilach, nidui, and therefore nidui is, we said, means that he's separated from him. That means that's a type of nether.
Why do people do that? Why would you do that with somebody? Just having a fight or?
Yeah.
Here also talks about like to correct his like behavior. When someone doesn't have the correct behavior, they kind of do this for a while, and then like if they don't correct the behavior, that they could be like permanent.
Is the person doing to himself or someone else doing to a person?
Do it to someone. Oh, I'm so sorry.
This is a regular case of being ostracized is a punishment by either the rabbis or the court for something that he did wrong. Now we're talking about that the person is saying about himself that he is ostracized from someone else. It's not being done as a punishment by the court because of a sin. It could be that there was a sin, but it's not necessarily so. Well,
Because they don't like them, or there's
Could be.
It's like a lockdown, not getting a shot. So I mean, is it a punishment? It's a self-punishment.
right.
You're putting yourself in. You're removing yourself from everybody else because
People do this today all the time. They just don't use the word neither, but they say like, I haven't spoken to that relative in 20 years because of what they did at this and this thing. So years ago, that was a neder that they're not talking to. Now it's just like, oh, I'm just not calling, it's like a silent neder, right?
The first one, the first example of punishment, it reminded me of what they did what was done to JCPenney.
What was that?
They kicked them out of the newspaper.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, what'd you say?
That was a reference to Yashka.
Like the part of it is like an example. It's not that you put it up on yourself, that the head of the yeshiva kicked them out.
Right. So, yeah, this more to talk about on that. So, Rabbi Akiva Sava listened to the Rabbanan Sava listened to Mishamtanahu. The Rabbanan say that that's just an excommunication. An excommunication, remember we said that that's not considered a vow. Well, Pliga de Rav Chisda. This argues on Rav Chisda. Why? Because the way we just explained this is that you have to be very specific here to go under the category where Rabbi Akiva wants to be strict. It's only if you use the language of nidoi and not the language of shamta. Shamta is the excommunication. You have to use the language of ostracize, not excommunicate. Nidoi, not shamta. Pliga de Rav Chisda.
So it's as if he's saying there's no yod. You have to be specific, no partial statements.
Right,
or inference.
something like that. Yeah, this word needs to be clear. Why? And what does this? What does Rav Chisda say? The hu gavadamer mishamtana benichsei debrei the Rav Yirmiyah Barabba. There was a fellow that said that I'm excommunicated from the property of the son of Rav Yirmiyah Barabba. Asalakami de Rav Chisda comes to Rav Chisda. Is he now allowed to have benefit from the son of Rav Yirmiyah Barabba? Doesn't give us his name. Amalei les l'chashla the hadar of Akiva kasav v'shamtana plig. Oh. You have a pencil? Let's have to do like this. Lest the choshla lahad Rabbi Akiva. His comment, Rabbi Chizda's comment was, don't worry about the word, about when saying Mishamta, that he was excommunicated, because that would be something that Rabbi Akiva would be strict about, but we're not concerned about Rabbi Akiva. Now, according to us, Rabbi Akiva wasn't even referring to that. But obviously, according to Rabbi Chizda, Rabbi Akiva was referring to that. So Kasavar b'Shamtana Pligi, Rav Chizda was thinking that Rabbi Akiva and the sages were arguing about the word Mishamtana, about excommunication. But according to our Gemara, what we were saying before, we're only concerned about the word Nidai, not Mishamtana. Amar Rabbi Ila Amar Rav. We mentioned about excommunication. We say like this. Rabbi Ila says the name of Rav. Nidu b'fanav. If a person was
He's been harassing me.
Sue him. Get a lawyer.
He's
so if someone is ostracized, nidui, and they ostracize him in front of him. So when they want to release him from that, ein matir le'el b'fanav, they can only release him in front of him as well. Two interpretations the Ran gives. The first one he doesn't like. He says the first one is that if they do it in front of him, then it's much stronger. And if they want to release him, they have to release him in a strong way, which is also in front of him. The Ran doesn't accept that pshat. He says his pshat is that the reason why they need to release him in front of him is because if they don't release him in front of him, they have to call him back in to tell him that he's released from the being ostracized. If they don't do it in front of him, then other people are going to know about it, that he's released, and he won't know about it. And then he's going to see people taking this being ostracized lightly because he thinks he's still ostracized. Meanwhile, they're inviting him for for the kiddush. So he's going to say, oh, Manidoi is not really important. So therefore, if he was ostracized in front of a court, which means he knows about that he was ostracized, then they have to call him back to be released. But if he wasn't ostracized in front of the court, then he's going to see people that are taking it lightly. It's because he's going to understand that the same way they didn't call me to court to ostracize me, that they released me also without calling me to court. And he won't take it that it's just not a strict thing. That's how the Ran learns this.
So what if someone says, okay, you ostracized me, you don't want to sit with me, I can't go to the kiddush, I can't do this, I can't do this, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go live somewhere else. This opinion would mean he's stuck. Right? Like, it doesn't make sense to me if they can't release him when he's not there. I know it's to force someone to do something.
So the Ran then adds in that if they release him and he's not there, first of all, according to this pshat, he's released. According to the first pshat, if he's ostracized if they ostracize him in front of the court, in front of him, so then it's a much stronger type. Then he needs to be called back to be released. Then if they end up doing the release without him there, then it wasn't strong enough. He's not released. But according to this pshat, that it's just you don't do it because you don't want anything negative to come out of it. Then if they did release him, then he is released. And also another point is that it's really just to notify him that he was released. So they can send a messenger to notify him as well and not call him back, according to this pshat. Okay, now, Nidu Shlai Befana. Let's say they ostracize him and he wasn't in front of them. So Matir Shlai Befana, Bein Befana, Bein Shlai Befana. Then he could be released, not in front of them as well. Because, like the Ran explained, that when he's going to see people that are not taking it serious, he's going to understand that just like they ostracized me and I wasn't there, so they released me and I wasn't there. It must be that he's released. Amar Rav Chanan Amar Rav. Rav Chanan says in the name of Rav, Hashimeas Karas Hashem Mipi Chaver Tzarach Lanadaisei. If someone hears his friend saying Hashem's name in vain, so the friend is obligated to ostracize him. And if he doesn't ostracize him, then the person himself should be ostracized. Anywhere where mentioning God's name in vain is found, their poverty is found. Vanias kamisa, and poverty is just like death. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, kimesu kol ha'anashim. What happened over here? It's very interesting. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to return to Egypt because the people that wanted his life have already died. And who were those people that wanted his life? That was Dasan and Abiram. Now, Dasan and Abiram, turns out they weren't really dead because they show up again by the story of Kairach. So obviously they didn't die. So we actually have four possibilities of people that are considered dead, even though they're not dead. They're still alive, but they're considered dead. So it's poverty, blind, leprosy, and someone that doesn't have children. Okay, now.
Russia also considered that.
Yeah. But this not that this is yeah, that's an interesting point because it says right, the wicked, right? Well, in this category of four, which is not talking about their sins, it's talking about situations that they're in. So which one would it be that Hashem would be telling Moshe that he's able to go back to Egypt because the people are dead and they're really not dead? So which one would it be? So it says, the Argamar says that it's they're poor. The Ran says maybe they're blind, because they can't be blind, because by the Machlekas by Kairach, it says even if you would poke out the eyes of these people, we won't come up to that man. That means that obviously they were seeing, they weren't blind. And maybe they had leprosy. It says they can't be that they have leprosy, because it says that the Beker of Kol Yisrael, that this took place amongst all the Jewish people, which means that if they would have leprosy, they would have been outside. They had to be outside the camp. But so the Ran says, but maybe they got healed at the giving of the Torah. So he says, you can't say that because they lost whatever they were healed by the giving of the Torah when they served the Egel, so it would have been back. So maybe it's because they didn't have children. How does our Gemara know that it's because they were poor? It says it doesn't make sense that Hashem should be telling Moshe that don't worry about those guys. They lost their power in the court, the Paris court, because they don't have children. No, it must be because they were poor, and that's why they lost their power in the political power, because they lost their money, and that's why you can go back and it's safe. The Tanya, we have a brisa. Anywhere where the sages put their eyes, over there is either death or poverty, which means, what's the point of saying that? That's to tell us that death and poverty are comparable. It's that a Russian proverb. It's better to be rich and healthy than sick and poor. Okay. So, Amar Rab Abba, Havikaimna Kame de Rav Huna. Rab Abba says, I was standing in front of Rav Huna. Shamala lahach itza dafkias karas Hashem levatala. He heard this woman that was just mentioning God's name in vain. Shamte. So he made her excommunicated. Basharala, and then he released her la'alta bapa. Right in front of her, he released her. So he did a quick excommunication. Shema mina tlas. We learned from Rav Huna three things. Shema mina shemeazkars Hashem mipicha v'ertzach l'nadai. So first of all, that they have to excommunicate the person that mentions God's name. Shema mina nidu b'fanav matirin layel b'fanav. We also learn that you have to release the person in front of them, just like we learned, right? Shema mina. We also learn ein bein nidi la'afarav leiklum, that you don't have to wait. That you don't have to wait in between the excommunication. There's no you have to wait 3 days before you can do it. No, it's not true. You can release them immediately.
Did we learn if a person knows if they're excommunicated or
Not necessarily. I guess they have to be notified.
this is, they have to have said Hashem's name. There's no yad to this, like where someone typically says, I
Right.
swear, but
Right.
they don't say Hashem's name. That we're not talking about.
Right.
The mamas.
I'm not actually sure what happened over here. Did they just say Hashem's name, just like, Ado, whatever? What is that? They just said Hashem's name, or did they take a vow in vain? Like, what did they say a bracha in vain? Or like, what did they do exactly? What was the?
Straightforward example.
Oh,
Like,
this
I
is-
swear. This is take a false oath. Here gives an example.
They took a false oath.
Listening.
We're saying unnecessary blessing.
Takes a false oath. No. When we hear another individual mention the name of God in vain, comma, take a false oath in God's name, comma, or say an unnecessary blessing, comma, is obligated to ostracize that individual. So there are 3 examples of this. Okay.
But what if they said Baruch Shem before the guy ostracized? Because that's what we
All right. Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm really lost here. Thank you. Generally, when somebody's excommunicated, it's an instruction to other people
Right.
about how to treat that
Right.
person. It's not to the person itself.
But it's also to the person himself. Because he's supposed to, what did you say? He's supposed to tear his clothes. He's supposed to not eat meat or drink wine. And there's some rules about him as well. What happened when Rabbi Akiva went to tell Rabbi Eliezer that your friends are separating from you? They put him in Nidui, right?
What
They put him
happens,
in Nidui or put him in Cherub? Rabbi Eliezer is being ostracized.
what happens when the Beis Din sends a letter out? Such and such a person is not listening to the Beis Din.
Right.
He's in favor.
Yeah, everyone ignores it.
No, okay, but it's a letter to other people.
Yeah.
It's not a letter to
Yeah.
him.
So the only time that would really be relevant that people would take it serious was if someone didn't give his wife a get. Then the shuls would like not allow him in and otherwise. But if it was a monetary case, people don't take it serious. They're just like everyone has. Not everyone, but it's so common that it's impossible to, you look around the shul, you can't. Not our shul, but
So you're saying it means something when he says to an individual and there's no one else around. You're
Right.
excommunicated.
Right.
That meant something.
Right.
Where did he get the authority to do that?
He took it back and
He says he can do that. This is an individual.
yeah.
They were building a house on Shabbos in the community. And they said no one could enter that house after it's built.
Oh, really?
Because
Doesn't make sense because the builders run their own schedule. We learned that previously.
No. But in the area where that would be an excuse if it would be outside the Jewish area and no one knew the house was Jewish, then you would say that they can do it. But in the area itself, in the frum area, they can't build on Shabbos. Even if it's what's called kablanas, even if it's
I see it
contract.
down there because sorry, they're Mexicans. They're coming in. And they
Yeah.
come on Shabbos.
They're probably
And
supposed
the
to tell
builders are Jewish builders. And the owners.
They're probably supposed to tell them not to. Yeah.
But they run their own schedule.
Maybe it wasn't the malacha. I don't know.
Just
I don't
erase
know.
that. Can we go back?
Okay.
We'll edit the video.
Rav Gidl Amarav.
What?
Rav Gidl said the name of Rav.
Double down.
Talmud Chacham, Menad Latzmei, Met Latzmei. Talmud Chacham can put himself in Nidui, and he can take himself out of Nidui. This is sort of like home base. No, not home base. Like when you're playing tag, and you're at on the base, like they can't tag you. Somehow he like gets out of, and then he comes back. Well, Pshita. That's obvious. If he can put himself in Nidui, then he can take himself out. The Gemara says, no, it's not so obvious. Because Maldatemein Chabash Matats and Beis Asurim could say that maybe a prisoner can't get himself out of prison. He can get himself in, but he can't get himself out.
Right.
Or the back of the police car. You can open the door from the outside, but you can't open the door from the inside. So, right? So you could say maybe he could get in, but he can't get out.
But
That's what they told me.
Wow.
But it didn't apply to safes in the time of,
the children.
what's his name, that famous,
That he locked himself in. They got locked in the
yeah,
safe.
because he said safes were made not to break into, but that you could break out, that's how it break out. Houdini.
Well, Kamash Malan comes to tell us that no, that he can get out of it. Echidami, what's the case? Kihada Marzutra Chasida. Here's the case. Marzutra Chasida. Kimechayev Barbe Rav Shamta. It was a yeshiva student that needed to be put in Cherem in Shamta. Well, out of respect for the yeshiva student, that it was like a bad day for. So first he put himself in Cherem. So Mishames Nafshei Beresha. Marzutra Chasida put himself in Cherem. But the Mishames Barbe Rab, and then he put the other this other student in Cherem. But when Marzutra Chasida was on his way home, Sharile Nafshei, he released himself. And then he released the other person. Okay.
That's only because his name was Hasidah, so he took care of himself.
Very
on
nice.
his own, so
Beautiful.
he had to do that.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, pass this down. So the Ran goes through an interesting thing of it. He says, why did he release himself? He says because he didn't want the household to have to distance himself from him if he's not released. He says the Ravid says that a person's wife does not need to keep the laws of Nidoi from him. The person's wife doesn't have to separate from him because the wife and him are one. So it can't sound like he's excommunicating his hand from, it's they're one person. Nidoi, right? Well, he has a raya for this. His raya is that the Gemara has a question: is someone in Nidoi, in Cherem, allowed to have marital relations? The Gemara has a question. He says, I don't understand the question. Because everyone needs to be distant from him. 4 Amos. So of course, why is the Gemara even asking that? It must be that it wasn't a question about his wife keeping the nidui. The question was a question about him. Obviously, his wife is allowed to be in it within his 4 Amos. The question is he allowed to have relations when he's in this situation of nidui? Not because of the other person, because it's a law on him. So, but the Ran says that it's not necessarily the case because there is a rule, there is a way that a person could be in Cherem from the people of his city, but not a Cherem with people from another city. So it could be that his wife is from the other city and he's able to have relations with her because she's from another city. The proof would only be that if everybody needs to be distant from him, so how could you even ask that question? No, the proof is from the fact that the Gemara had that question. So the Ran says, no, the Gemara could have asked that question, even though normally his wife would have had to be separated from, but here she's from a different city and he was only in Cherem from people. Okay, I'm Rav Gidel.
It's interesting the way in American law, that people who are incarcerated are entitled to common relations.
Oh, they are. Okay, let's leave it over here. We don't have. We'll leave the Gemara right here.
That kind of. Yeah, I know.
Please show me where you
Isn't there a
were.
part on your spouse having to be like
Lenient halacha.
class or whatever?